morning.
Good morning.
Come on, give me something back. Good morning.
Good morning.
Losers. Okay. So, again, I need you to make a transition. I need you to transition from the world of being academic to a world of belonging to a profession. Okay. It's not that we're not academic or that we don't have the capacity to be academic, but most of us do not sit in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee to be appointed to the Supreme Court. You know, the reality of law is that it is a business. So essentially you're going into a business, which requires that you have certain skills, as all businesses do, but you want to be in this business, okay? And this business starts with, you can almost think of law school as a business school, where it's really, there's no business you're going to go into that doesn't have content. Yeah. So it's for sure law school is content. But the business of being a lawyer is being prepared. It really, honestly, God, is being prepared. And I think, as I've mentioned, you know, not everybody has the will, not everybody has the discipline to prepare when you're in a universe of people who do prepare. Do you get it? It's like, okay, not to prepare if the other party's not prepared. Talk to me.
Yeah.
And that's the world you're in now. That essentially, you know, for the most part, it's a general principle. Students who do well are prepared. Students like me who don't do well don't give a shit. Oh, okay. So your standard is muted. But now you're coming into a world where you want to, you know, do what Jim has done for a living, or what Keith does, or what I've done, and it really is preparation. And so the people I compete with also have the preparation gene. They will crush me. They would Jim would absolutely crush me if I did not prepare in advance to see him in court. Do you guys get that?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that I could crush him if he didn't prepare because he's so freaking smart. But I could put lots of dents in his armor if he came in unprepared, which he wouldn't. Right.
What is
So,
that like? How do you prepare?
I'm sorry?
What is your process of like preparing?
I'm psycho, basically. When I prepare, there's nothing else in the world. There's nothing else that exists. I'm going to destroy whatever's in my way. That's why we're all in therapy. But a lot of it comes from, do you have that gene? You know, do you have, because if you go through this in the third person, if you go through this certainly the way I went through college, you make such a terrible mistake. Do you kind of get that Jim, Keith, and I, very different people, do you kind of get that we all really enjoy what we're doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it's about. It's hard not to be good at what you enjoy. It really is hard not to be good if you really enjoy something. I mean, and you can get to enjoy something that you didn't enjoy initially. I mean, you don't have to, say, well, I wanted to be a lawyer since I've been age 5. You can, when you get good at something, even if you weren't all that thrilled with it, you get a lot of positive feedback. You get a lot of self-esteem. You get a lot of, oh crap, I'm good at this. Yes, you are. Maybe that's why God put me here. Maybe it is. Maybe not. But so I'm trying to get to is when you see, you don't ever want to be 64, which is where I'm told I am, but it beats the alternative. And for sure, you want to be able to say at 64 that for the past 30 years you've been doing what you love to do. Now, love's a little bit strong. Like the trial stuff was not something I love to do, but I couldn't do what I do now but for that. That was a necessary condition. So here you've got the LSAT, and this is your first opportunity to make this transition, right? We're not academic. Again, do you get that no one has ever asked me in court to describe Milton Friedman's theory of macroeconomics and monetarism? No one has ever asked me to describe in court Rand's philosophical theory of objectivism. No one has ever asked me in court to explain any math problem. Nobody's asked me what a hypothesis is. Nobody's asked me to speak in French or Greek. You get the things you're tested on in college are not the things that really matter in law. You need to be able to learn, and it really helps to love to learn, that's for sure. So, I need you to make this, and I think that's where I'm going to head for the most part today, is let's practice. It's all right here. You know, technique is too trite of a word, because you're changing the way you think. But I've got to drill in, this is not an academic test. Do you get, we have your GPA. Everybody get that? So why do we need more academic information? It's 4 years of data. For those of you with advanced degrees, it'll be 6 years of data. We know your academic, we don't know your academic abilities, but we have evidence of it. So the LSAT's not there for that. Very different, very, very different. Do you get that there are a lot of very academically gifted people who are never going to be lawyers? Well, but stop and think about that. Like, why? Well, then it implies that law involves something more than academics. And do you get there are a bunch of people, me included, who are basically failures in the academic world, meaning, you know, below average, right? Who do perfectly fine as lawyers. How does that happen? How can a dumb son of a bitch like me, right, have done the very same things a smart son of a bitch like Jim has done? How does that happen? It's not academics. And that's where this test is going. It's psychometric. Okay. So I need you to make this transition to the test is measuring, can you learn to learn the way you will learn in law school? It's that bloody simple. When you come in here, your old learning is going to go out the window, and a new form of learning is going to be presented to you. Some will adapt and some will not. The LSAT is what's informing the law school whether you have the ability to adapt, because the law school, the LSAT, you would never be given an LSAT in college. It's not testing you on what you know. It's just, there's nothing about what you know that's on this test. So, you got to keep in mind when you're doing this test, how many points are you awarded for answering the very most difficult question?
1.
And how many points are you awarded for answering the most basic question?
1.
And is it fair, and what percent of test takers have the ability to complete this particular test? What percent of test takers have the ability to complete this test?
1 or 2%.
Right, let's go with 1.5%. So can you all just like take this in, right? You want to be lawyers, right? So do you get there, of everybody in this room, doesn't everybody in this room want to think they're in that 1.5%? Don't we all? But think, because you want to be lawyers now, right? Okay, so slap yourself in the back of the head. I mean, unless you're in that 1.5%, slap yourself in the fucking back of your head. You want to be lawyers, right? So if you're not in that 1.5%, wouldn't it be swell if you became aware of that fact? Okay, and I'm not in that 1.5%. I'm not sure Jim is in that 1.5%. He might be. Do you get how freaking bright he is? Okay. Well, are you as bright as Jim?
Hell no.
I'm just saying. Again, you can ask him. You know, he'll be back, right? You can ask Jim if he thinks that he could actually complete the test and get everything right. And I'm pretty sure he's going to say no. But I'm not positive. But I'm going to say no, right? So if I'm up here to be a 180, you're in the wrong room, right? I'm a lawyer. I know how to get things done. I understand my strengths. I understand my weaknesses. I embrace them, and I'm human. But this test, if you're going to say to me, you get 1 point for no matter how difficult something is, would it be fair to infer that something, again, go to IRAC now, right? This is the whole, it doesn't matter what section we're in, and that's what I kind of want to get to today, is to see IRAC in each of the 3 sections, right? This is what it's all about. Does anybody recall what the median score in this, out of 100, anybody recall what the median score is?
151.
Yeah, it's the median scale score, but raw. Out of 100 questions.
60.
It's 60 is a little on the high side, but yeah. So when you talk about people who have no time, right? The test is designed so that a representative test taker can answer 58 out of 100 questions. Now, if you think that out a little bit, right? God forbid we think things out. But if you think that out a little bit, if you got 70% of all the questions you answered right, and you wanted to end up with a 58, well, what would that be? So if you got 70% right, and you want, so that would be 56 carry 5, and that would be, I'm carrying 5, right? So that would be what, 40? Okay. So if you wanted 70%, so is that right? So if I take 98 and I go 0.7, what do I get? 56 carry 5. No, that would be high, right? Because that's 63, that's 68. In other words, 70% of 98 would get you 68. So if your goal was to get a 68, right? If that was your goal. Now a 68, get some texture here. You need, have I mentioned you need a plan? So roughly, if you got a 68 on this test, is going to be about a 156, 157. So if what you want to do is get, and you get, if you have this score, and you have a GPA of, say 3.3, something in that range, right? You're going to get tons of money from a bunch of schools. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Right, so you have to have an objective. You can't come in here, you can come in here agnostic, you should come in here agnostic. But when you take the test, you got to say, you know, if you're shooting for this, now obviously if you're going to go higher, this changes, right? But if you were shooting for this, and you said, but when I answer the questions, I get about 70% right. If you said that, right, well then you'd have to answer 98 questions to get to 68. You need this variable. You need to understand what percent are you getting right. If that went up to 80%, say you got 80% of the questions right, you'd have to answer fewer questions because you're getting 80% right, right? So if you take the same thing, say you want to get, if we take that same 98, we multiply it by 0.8, well, it wouldn't work that way, right? This would be 64 carry 6, 70, that's what, 72, 78, 78. So if you're getting 80% right, and you wanted to end up at that point, you'd be answering 78 questions. You can answer a lesser number of questions if you're getting a higher percent right. So,
Can you repeat that last point again?
yeah. The goal of this is all preparation. So the goal of this is, if I read, I'm going to be using IRAC for everything, right? When I get skilled at this, at the IRAC stuff, I'm going to be able to answer a greater number of questions than I'm presently able to answer. If you find that you can answer, and I don't mean it this way, but say you found you could answer 50 questions, 50. Say you took half of the test, right? But when you did 50 questions, you got 80% right. You would have a 40 in the bank. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Well, because this is what I need you to do. This is not, let's sit down and, let me give you a test to take under time conditions and I can go outside and, text somebody or something. That's not how you learn. You want to be lawyers, right? So if you extrapolate from that plan, like if you're really problematic, if you're saying, I'm really struggling with this. Well, if you're really struggling with this, don't you need a more defensive plan? And wouldn't answering half the test be an incredibly defensive plan? Right? Well, let's say you answered half the test and you've been doing this, right? So you say, you know what? When I do that, I get 80% of all those questions right. Well, you just got a 40, right? Now that leaves you the 50 questions you didn't answer to guess on, yes? Okay, and you're likely to get 20% of those right. Right, so you add another 10 and you're up to a 50. Okay, so 50, what will 50 do for you? I mean, how diseased is this that we even have to look to see would a 50 qualify you for law school? A 50 would be, on this test, a 146. So 146 you will be accepted into several law schools with a decent GPA. Accredited law schools, fine law schools, schools that if you want to transfer out after your first year, you can transfer out. So do you get, if that's where you find yourself, I understand that's not the place you want to be, right? But if that's where you find yourself, the proper plan can end up with valid outcome. Do you get it? So this process is about what's that number and what's that percent? And you got to go section by section. So if you took it section by section, just heaven's sakes. So Kinsley asked like what I do for trial, right? This is what I do for trial. You with me? You break something down into its constituent parts until you have a series of micro plans. So for me it's different. For me it's witnesses, right? Or if I'm an appellate case, it's issues, or one at a time. But I'm sitting where you are, it's so easy. I don't mean the test is easy. I mean coming up with a plan is easy. So you again, what attorneys do is they gather evidence. It would be fair to say that it appears I've gathered some evidence with respect to this test.
Yes.
Okay. And would it be fair to say you've at least not heard some of the things you've heard in this room anywhere else?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's the evidence gathering process. But being a lawyer is then morphing evidence into intelligence, and that's really what it's about. Because a lot of people can be really good at gathering evidence. Looking at files, reading witness statements, getting evidence from a crime scene, that's all getting the evidence. Taking that evidence and trying to solve a crime that was committed 14 years ago, that's changing the evidence into intelligence. And that's certainly what I've done in unsolved homicides, is okay. It's a really cool process, and it's where you are now. So you know when you open up a section, right? So you're going to open up the first section, it's logical reasoning, right? So now you already know. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to see okay. Everybody agree you're going to open up and you're going to see something like that. Those are the question numbers, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. So those numbers got assigned by a human being. Capiche? And have we some evidence that those numbers are preliminary evidence of difficulty?
Yes.
In logical reasoning. Yes, talk to me.
Yes.
Because this would be it. Again, I would throw you the fuck out of the office in a heartbeat. If we're in, not you, but I'm saying if you're in here, right, and we're trying a case, and we're trying to case together, and we're a team, and we're trying to case together, and then, you know, you're on your cell phone or some bullshit, get the fuck out. So this is the culture you're coming into, right? It's not, don't do it if it's not on your heart, right? But this is your future. So if you can't get pumped, if you can't get disciplined, right, about this, what are you going to get disciplined for? So you get this, and you're competing with people who are clueless. Okay. Do we have reason to believe that next to or below this, will be next to this number, you'll be presented with an issue and a law? Talk to me.
Yeah.
And do we have reason to believe that there will be issues that you are presented with that have difficulties, a level of difficulty 5, and issues you will be presented with that have difficulty 1.
Yes.
Okay. And does it make sense that the way that happens is right here? That if I want at level 1, if I'm testing you on do you have the ability to learn the way you're going to learn in law school, which is what the test, again, I can get you, the book from 1992 from Tom White, who used to run the LSAC, who leaves it, who says, oh, by the way, what we're testing you on is 1, do you think like a lawyer? And 2, can you think in the way you're going to be trained to think in law school? And the way you are trained to think in law school is right here. So as you sit there now, you have some intuitive, God sent you down with something, right? In other words, God could have sent you down wired to be a lawyer. God could have sent you down so reasoning this way is as natural to you as I think it is to me. I think on this level that was very natural to me because I'm just not an emotive person. Just give me the evidence. Just give me the fucking evidence and let me curse. All right. Some of us get set down like social workers, and we get sent down with this incredible amount of empathy. We get sent down with this. We don't ever want to be judgmental. And that's as gifted as anyone, but that person's going to have a much tougher time reasoning this way. Do you get it?
Yes.
So, if I want a level 1, the issue is going to be straightforward. Again, there are only about 14 issues. There will be no new issue on your test. You're either prepared. If you see an issue for the first time on your test, what are you not? Prepared. It's like, fuck you. So, you inform yourself as to the level of difficulty of the issue because you've been working on these issues. You yourself now have a sense for your natural ability, all things being equal. But if I want a 1, I'm going to write an argument, right? And if you understand the first sentence and you understand the second sentence and you got those slash marks there and you say, no, I got that, and no, I got that, and you get to the end of it and you say, oh, no, I got that, what level of difficulty are you probably looking at? Now, the person next to you may see a 5. The person next to you, because the person next to you is not reading textually, right? They don't know they're not reading textually because they've never heard of it, right? But you're looking at a 1 and that person's looking at a 3 or a 5 because they're conflating 2 sentences or they're missing a word that's really important. So I get this. I'm doing that analysis contemporary, and again, this is what we're going to do today, right? I'm doing that analysis while I'm in there, right? It is critical, it is essential, it is unavoidable that when you get to this point, your mind has formed the contours of the answer. You do not find the answer in the answer choices. You simply confirm that what your mind produced is the answer by referencing the answer choices. So it is the opposite of process of elimination. There is no one in law school who's taking a final exam, which will be in essay form, who's using the process of elimination. It is stupid. I'm not paid to identify invalid outcomes. I'm paid to draw valid outcomes. That's a very different thing. And you get what the 5's going to look like, right? 5 is you're not looking at a flaw, you're looking at a parallel flaw. The 5 is you're reading the argument and you don't have a clue what the argument just said, notwithstanding that you have put slash marks for this punctuation. You're going to get 1 point for each, yes?
Yeah.
So in this beginning of this preparation, there's an expectation. Now, expectations are not always met, right? But there's an expectation. And that is that in logical reasoning, the level of difficulty is going to look something like this. Now, if you knew that in advance, here's the question number, right? We're not talking about reading comprehension. We're not talking about analytical reasoning. You get it? Again, the point at which your attention span fails you, you stop behaving like a lawyer. And if that means, getting an IV and putting coffee in a fucking IV and taking coffee that way, and you do what you got to do, right? If you got to do something illegal, go outside and do it, and then come back in. Right? But this all builds. In other words, you build the case block by block, right? And if you fail to pay attention to that second block, you got no place to put the third block. So where's Aristotle? Do you have some reason to believe, on the evidence that we have viewed, that when you look at logical reasoning and you look at questions 1 through 7, with respect to level of difficulty, it may look something like that? Talk to me.
Sure.
Do you have also some evidence to believe that when you look at over here, it may look like this? Question number 15 through 21, level of difficulty in Greek. Based on the data that has been released by the LSAC, do you have some reason to infer a likelihood? Did I say a likelihood? Perhaps a probability? Yes, I'll say a probability. Does that mean it's going to happen? No. Does it mean it's likely to happen?
Yeah.
Meaning, you're here, right? You're doing IRAC. You're working on question number 17, and you get to the law, and the law starts writing about the truly virtuous and altruistic person who seeks the principle of a valueless society. What level of difficulty is that? And what do you do with your ass?
Leave it.
You get it out of there. Where's Aristotle? So instead of that costing you 2.5 or 3 minutes to end up guessing, capiche? Don't you now get to reinvest that 2.5 minutes that you didn't spend over here, where maybe that level 3 is going to take a little more thought? Talk to me.
Yeah.
That's psychometric. Again, I have written college tests. I have never, ever, ever, ever written a college test designed to be completed by 2% of the people in that class. Ever. I have written college exams to be completed by 98% or 95%. I just want to penalize people who are just fucking clueless. Do you get that as your college experience? That when you take a test in college, what's generally not a problem? Come on, 4 letters, first order's a T.
Time.
Time. Because that's an academic test. This is a psychometric test. And you're going into, you're taking a knife to a gun butt. And you're going to die. So, you begin to build this sort of this matrix out. Okay? And you have 35 minutes to do this section, right? And then you say, again, you got to have some plan. You got to say, what would I like? What would be ideal? And then you can adjust the ideal to what you're going to achieve, right? So if you say, well, what would be ideal in logical reasoning would be to get a... Now, again, if you put minimums in here, right? If you're talking about just getting into law school, and you put minimums in there, you're probably going to be competitive if you're around a 13. You with me? Because that's going to be getting about half of them right. So, if we were to say, if you were to say, let me experiment. I want to experiment with getting in logical reasoning the 17. Can you move that number up or down at will? Sure. But you need to start with some number, right? Okay. But now you say, well, wait a minute. Does everybody agree that if 1 is a level 1, and 17 is a level 5. It should take me, generally speaking, less time to go through this process on question number 1 than to go through this process on question number 17. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And they give me 80 seconds, minute 20 seconds for each question. So if I'm going for a 17, I need to know what percent of questions, 17 of what? In other words, if I'm going to get 70% right, how do I get to a 17? Well, I don't know, 70% of 25. We'll give you 17.5. Do you guys get it? How do you think this is any different than preparing for a trial? It is no different. It's a really cool test. And if this isn't in you, right, to do this type of work and set this up, it's the wrong profession. Because the people you'll compete against who are successful will do this to their core. So now, if I answer all 25 questions, to get to that 17, I need to get 70% right. But what if I get 8%? What if I can get 80% right? What if I can get 80% right? Like if I wouldn't have to do 25, because if I was 25 and I was getting 80% right, that's 40 carry 4, that'd be 20, right? So you get this means to achieve my objective here, I don't need 25 questions. So I'm going to get 80% right, I don't need 25 questions. So 80% of 20 would be 16. If we just simplify it by that, does everybody get that if your goal is to get a 17? Yes? Talk to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go in there with a plan, and the plan is I'm only going to work on 20 of the 25 questions. Well, if you're working at 80%, that's going to get you a 16, and if you're guessing on the remaining 5, that's going to get you a what? A 17. Talk to me. Do you see it? So that's my plan. If I can get it up to 90%, it'll go down even further, right? If I can say, well, wait a minute, what if I get, because see, here I'm going to get more time. Here I'm going to get more time per question because I'm only doing 20 of them, right? If I can get that to 90%, I'm thinking maybe we'll be at 18. If I had 18 and I got 90, 72 carries 7. 16.2. So if you're at 90%, you're down only after answering 18. Can you do this? Rather than sit down, in a mindless haze and take section after section after section like some moron, could you sit down and say, what am I trying to achieve? And then what am I capable of achieving, right? Because everybody's different. So now I say, let's say I went with this plan. Right? Let's say that's where I wanted to start. Say, well, what does this allow me to do? So I'm guessing on 5 questions, yes? And for those 5 questions, I was allotted 80 seconds. 80 seconds each, right? So that's 400 seconds. I divide 60 into that. That's 6+ minutes. Yes? Talk to me? Everybody agree?
Yeah.
So now I have a 20-question test, and I get 6 additional minutes. You with me? So now I'm dividing 20 into the total amount of time available of 35, not 25 into 35. Now, Does that feel pretty good? Would this give some sense of some relief from the time pressure on the test? Now, you're going to get, well, either you're going to get good at briefing, either you're going to be fluent in IRAC, or this probably isn't a good fit for you. So let's presuppose you're going to get good at it. Let's also presuppose it may take you longer than you wish it to take. Well, do you get that not everybody can do what Jim does? You with me? So if you want to do what Jim does, you have to share some attributes of Jimbo. Not the ones that are really scary, though, which I know. Yeah. You know you're going to see a bunch of level 1s and level 2s, and you're going to go in there saying, oh, I got the issue, I understood the argument, the analysis as I was reading this, right, and they told me there was a flaw in there. So as I'm reading this, I'm saying, yeah, the flaw is correlation causation. Hey, I know it is. Or yeah, the flaw is necessary and sufficient condition, mixing them up. Yeah, or the flaw is, no, they gave me a poll and the poll has an underrepresentative sample. You get it, the work is done. You with me?
Yeah.
And then you look at whatever answer choice, now you're just looking to pick the answer choice, where the only thing we don't have are the writer's words. We have the writer's reasoning because we have acquired the writer's reasoning. That's how you're going to know you're a lawyer, when you acquire the writer's reasoning. Okay? So do you think maybe we don't need 80 seconds? Do you think maybe a minute and 20 seconds is just something we don't need when it's a level 1 and we see the answer in our own mind's eye? What do you think? Well, I'm telling you, you're not going to need anywhere near 80 seconds, right? And not because you're some freak bright. Well, maybe that makes you freak bright. I don't know. But I can do it, so I don't think anybody would claim I'm freak bright. So what if this +6 expanded? What if we have every reason to infer, based on the data they've released, that in any given logical reasoning section, without doubt, absolutely without doubt, no fewer than 10 of the 25 questions will be level 1 or level 2. You with me? And it's almost certainly going to be a higher number than that. But let's go with the 10. And let's say of that 10, when you're doing the IRAC thing, on 6 of them, you've got this done in under a minute. Let's even go with a minute. Let's just say you spent, and you wouldn't, but if you spent on 6 questions, if you spent 60 seconds, as opposed to the 80 seconds, didn't you now just pick up an additional 120 seconds? Talk to me.
Yeah.
And doesn't that come into 2 more minutes? So this now goes to +8. That's how you take the test. And you say, I know what to stay away from. How? Because I look at this. I'm going to certainly give the number assigned to it some value, but you might see that. That could be a 4 for sure, right? But you're not going to see tons of 4s there. So you need this, not just this. That's how you prepare. Does that sound like something a regular person could do? Yeah. Well, I guess it all depends what regular means. Right. But something I can do. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Okay, we're limiting this now to logical reasoning. What I want you to begin to do is, again, fluency, and this is critical. This is what it's all about. This tells you the level of difficulty. This tells you, have we also discussed issues upon which you can pull the trigger and get your ass out of there, and issues upon which you don't have that option. Whereas when you see a flaw issue on this test, which you're gonna see about 8 times, can you pull the trigger or not? Yes, the answer is yes. But you gotta get this, you with me? You rent this from Jim. You rent it from me. You have to take ownership of it. Right? So, on issues that identify flaws, it's a psychometric test. If B is the answer, if your mind comes up with correlation causation, and answer choice B says correlation causation, what's the answer? And yet, what does your college experience say you should keep doing? Right. So, just write down FC at the top of each page. Okay. Fuck college. Right. It's a psychometric test. Right. You're not going to get to be a lawyer by denying attributes that every lawyer that I know has. And that attribute of, I'm going to prepare, and nobody's going to out-prepare me, and yeah, am I going to be wrong? You bet your sweet ass I'm going to be wrong. But not often, and not about anything really serious. And then you go in and you have to have confidence. You have to. And if I can have confidence, you can have confidence. You have to have confidence. You've got to get rid of the low self-esteem stuff. And you've got to get rid of the arrogance. So, okay. Let's try to demonstrate some of this stuff.